Hey, Queen. I'm Vieira Miles, and this is the Holistic Sister Circle podcast, a show where we hear the stories of soulful women all over the world dedicated to sharing insight into why holistic health is the future and what women should do today to ensure they have the necessary tools and resources to bring out their inner royal roots, assess their body, and remedy any illness from the comfort of their home. Y'all, we are setting the royal record straight, okay? If you'd like to connect with us further, you can follow us at The Holistic Sister Circle on Instagram and join the Holistic Sister Circle Facebook group for live interviews, collaborative Q&A, and exclusive training on how to build your wellness dream team. Now, let's dive into this week's episode. See you on the other side. Welcome to another episode of the Holistic Sister Circle. Today we have Nicki with us, and Nicki is Mastery Method Certified, Trauma-Informed, Nervous System Educated Healing and Empowerment Coach and mother of two. She's devoted to helping high-achieving women heal from past beliefs and patterns, reconnect with their nature, and step into their authenticity and power so they can flourish. She blends science, soul, and strategy to help women create success rooted in safety and alignment instead of exhaustion. Nicki, I'm so excited to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we get started, I would love for you to just share with us, what is something about you that you may not have shared on the internet yet? Or at all? I know, icebreaker.
Oh yeah, icebreaker. Okay, something about me that I may not have shared on the internet is actually, so I went through this sort of process myself of, and I've kind of touched on it in a bunch of different ways, but like I went through this process myself of burnout when I had my daughter, and it was honestly like the hardest thing that I was going through at the time. And I don't think I shared how isolating it felt for me. I don't think I ever really I've shared my story and I've shared my experience, but what I'm seeing now is this pattern playing out again. And I feel like I'm coming back around in this like full circle moment where I'm seeing this same loop, but now I'm seeing it from a different perspective because I'm seeing it playing out more in society. And I'm seeing people sharing it and feeling not alone in that. And so I guess something about me is that I feel very privileged to be in a position now where I'm seeing, this new view of vulnerability in this space. And that's something that makes me really excited that I can be part of like now helping on that other side.
And you know what? I'm glad that you mentioned this because I have felt the same way recently. Yesterday, I was interviewing someone and we were specifically focusing on astrology. And part of the episode was she actually was, I told her to go ahead. I gave her all my information and I was like, read my birth chart to me on the show. I want to know a little bit more about what you find. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that she talked about with the planets, I believe we talked about Saturn and I think Mars. And she was saying, in 2012 and in 2021, you went through some drastic changes, which are very true. And right. She said, with those changes, you tried to get to the root of it. And I was like, wow, you're right. So in 2012, that's when I was actually trying to figure out what was causing my symptoms of like constipation and not being able to, go to the bathroom. I had started dabbling, seeing some gastrointestinal specialists, things like that. Not knowing that it would, be what it is today. And then in 2021, at that time, I was actually leaving a network marketing company where I was a distributor for health and wellness products. And I was frustrated with the company because, they're great products. I love the company, but I was frustrated because I felt like if I wanted to use a product outside of this company, it was very difficult for me to market it. Because you had to basically use their products only. And then if you wanted to market it, it could only be for their products. Like you couldn't do any cross promotion. So I ended up growing like a team there and I left. And when I left, my team fell apart and I was basically on no man's land. and I had to start over from scratch. And
Mhm.
fast forward to 2025, like how beautiful have I essentially combined the two? So I'm still distributing, for different brands now at this point. So different brands that I actually
Mhm.
use that I enjoy. I can be a prosumer in those areas. But then on top of that too, I also was able to remedy my IBS, and now I can
Mhm.
essentially bring those two environments together and be able to serve people in a different way. So I love that you shared that, because I was just like, wow, I could
Mhm.
totally see why you would say that.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like the biggest thing around that time for me was that I felt so much shame and isolation. So I just love seeing like how things are changing and how people are being more vulnerable and open. And I just love that I'm in a place right now in my life that I can be on the other side and serving.
Well, that's so exciting. So tell me something about you, and I think it's so important that people know not just your mission, of course, but
Mhm.
you were before all of this, right? Like, how did you actually get started? What did that process look like? Walk us through it.
Yeah. Okay, so I mean, I was in a corporate job for a long time. Um, but I didn't actually start out wanting to be in a corporate job like all little girls. No one goes like, I'm going to be a businesswoman, or maybe some women do, but mostly I don't think we ever really envision that for ourselves as kids, right? But I was a really sensitive kid, and I just knew I wanted to help and somehow make an impact on this world. And just there were so many things that I saw that other people didn't seem to see, or so many things that I cared about that other people didn't seem to. And I, dabbled in trying to help in a bunch of different ways, but I was a very sensitive kid. And so I had a lot of shame around that. Like I felt like that was a weakness and that I was very limited in my capacity to do that. Long story short, I ended up following a career path that didn't feel aligned for me. I went into political science because I was being pushed in that direction, and I just felt like a shell of myself in that program. And I started, like numbing and doing things because I was completely out of alignment, which I didn't know at the time. And eventually, I got into this position where I realized that like this whole well, it was like actually more of a traumatic event that sort of led me to this realization that this whole career path that I was taking for myself was actually sucking the life out of me, and I needed to make a change. And so I pursued international development, and I actually took an internship abroad. And when that sort of fell apart, part of me felt like I had like failed my dream or my purpose. And that's how I ended up in corporate, just basically thinking, okay, well, I'll just do what everyone else does, right? It seems to work for everyone else. So that's the path that I'll follow. And I did. And I climbed the corporate ladder, and I did really well because I was a very ambitious person, and I wanted to like prove myself after that sense of like failure, like I am worthy. I can do this, I can do something good. But there was a big disconnect there that eventually, over years and over time, I just got further and further away from myself. And after I had my daughter, that was a huge awakening for me, where I was just like doing it, trying to do it all and trying to juggle all the balls. And I just felt like I just can't do it anymore. And I don't know what it's all for, I just didn't know who I was anymore. I mean, motherhood has a very strange way of changing your identity, but I also didn't know, you know, like I felt like I had created this whole life around me that didn't feel like mine. Um, and so I was more reactive than I should have been with my daughter, because I was stressed all the time and I was burning out, and I was suffering in my relationships, and just everything felt like it was crumbling. And that was my wake up call to be like, all right, I have to fix myself. That's what I started this journey thinking. I have to fix myself. And when I started that, I realized that there was no needing to fix myself. It wasn't me that was a problem. I was like conditioned into these beliefs and into these ways of being by like my upbringing and by like society and the culture and like capitalism and patriarchy, consumerism, like all these things. Like I had sort of just tried so hard to fit this mold that never felt like mine, because I didn't think that I could do what was really in my heart. And so, yeah, that's a little bit of the backstory that led me to coaching, because when I started my own journey, I started a journey of self-healing, self-reclamation, and this re-empowerment that reconnected me with what I think is my nature, and like nature itself, like reminding myself that like the connection to something bigger is important. And through that process, I really came home to myself and found coaching and the desire to help other women do that as well.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing and just being
Mm,
vulnerable with
Thank
us.
you.
I mean, I can only imagine not just how that affected you, but your entire household too. Because a lot of the times we always think that just because we're moody or we're upset, that it doesn't affect everyone that's close to us. And someone asked me yesterday a really good question. You know, she said, write down everyone that's on your list, or just think about everyone that's on your list that you love and that you want to make sure that you pour into. And I wrote the list. And then she asked, she said, are you on it? And I said,
Mm,
no, I'm not on my own list. And she's like, that's where it starts, right?
right. Yeah.
We're always
That's
so
exactly
focused
it.
on getting, helping other
Yeah.
people. And we forget about ourselves and forget about the things that we did to make us feel like us again. So I
Yeah.
think that's
I always
incredible.
say that I felt like there was something missing in my life. And really what I discovered is I was what was missing in my life. Like I wasn't present. I wasn't there. I wasn't making decisions. I was just like operating on autopilot and not involved in like the things that I wanted, or not thinking that I was worthy of even having them, or being like the person who pours into herself, because that felt selfish or whatever. Right. So, yeah, it's so true.
That was a nugget right there. So for those of y'all who are listening, that like I knew I want you to write that down, right? I was missing. I was
Yeah.
missing my own story. How are you the main character and you're not giving main
Right.
character energy? Like,
Right, exactly. And so many of us are, and that's the way we work, like this lens that's just focused outward, right? And we
yes.
forget to turn that lens back inward. We forget that our eyes see out, but we also have the ability to see within ourselves and look for like what we need. And that's a big part of like the work that I do, is helping people kind of turn that lens back inward and fill themselves back up. Like, what do I need right now in this moment? Because there are so many ways that we're disconnected from ourselves that we don't even realize, like, oh gosh, I could really use a hug right now. Like, even not from somebody else, but maybe from myself, like maybe I just need to hug myself and be like, girl, you're doing a really great job, you know, or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. What would you say to someone who's just mindlessly scrolling on social media? They're always looking at themselves in the mirror and comparing themselves to what they see online. They're allowing that to affect their relationships with men, allowing that to affect their relationships with their kids, and really just putting themselves in a position where they do feel unworthy, but they don't necessarily know how to seek help.
Mm. Yeah. So I think like it's so interesting. There's a part of us that always knows like, oh, we need to love ourselves first. And then there's also a lot of people who are like, oh yeah, I do love myself. And then on the other end of the spectrum, people being like, yeah, but I don't really know like how do I actually do that? Like how do I in practice do that? Um, but I think that is really such a key, because we don't realize the way that we project onto the other people in our lives so much our own insecurities, right? And that bleeds into the way that we treat people, because when we don't know how to give ourselves compassion, um, and understanding, sometimes it's hard to like see other people clearly and see their intentions like clearly. We tend to see them as we believe they see us, you know? Like, does that make sense? Like we tend to like look at them thinking like they see me this way and so they're probably doing this, or you know, and a lot of times people are so self-focused but yet so out of touch with themselves at the same time. It's this really like weird push and pull dynamic that we have where we're like our ego is operating the show, which is why I said like we're so self-focused. But at the same time, it's like on for the person that's here, let me just back up and give an example. For example, someone is going through a moment and they text their friend and they say, you know, like, gosh, I'm just having such a hard time, like, and they vent or whatever. And I could really just, I could use a friend today. And then that person doesn't answer them. Maybe they think like, oh, you know, like they're too busy for me, or, you know, like we make all these assumptions about their intentions or like what's happening, like this fortune telling. And that's like the ego just like operating the script based on our own insecurities. And instead of being based on like our understanding of like human beings, like, do you know what I mean? Like this person obviously loves me. And if I'm in touch with like my own self-love, I know that. But when I'm when I'm operating from the wounded side of me, I can't see that. And so I'm like distorting my view. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does make sense. How Okay, and the reason I ask this question is because I've been there, right? I've been there
Mm-hmm.
where I'm essentially just in the wilderness for years, just
Mm-hmm.
mindlessly doing things, being robotic, not putting any extra focus or attention on anything. I'm just settling, essentially, is what
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things I'm so grateful for is, you know, my husband, because he would like he saw me, he saw the type of person that I was before we started dating. And then he also saw the person that I was when we first started dating. And then he also saw the person that I became after um, his babies came to live with us full time, right? Well, first they were part time, then they were full time. So he saw like the changes and the evolution of it. And I remember him pulling me to the side and he's just like, yo, where are you at? Like, this doesn't work unless you're here. Where are you? And I couldn't answer his question because I'm like, I don't know. I truly don't know where I'm at. And I remember him, just like telling me, you're not the person that I fell in love with. You're just not that person. And where is she? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't even know how to get back to that. I have no idea. All I know right
Mm-hmm.
now is that I'm all over the place and I'm emotional and I'm
Yeah.
spiraling, and you're pouring into me. You're having these deep conversations with me. You're trying to figure it out. But because I'm distorted and I'm focusing solely on my wounds and not necessarily from a place of certainty and groundingness and actually focusing on the spiritual aspect of it, I'm losing you. So we're night and day, we're opposite.
Right.
And it got to a point where I was just like, okay, I have to make a decision. I'm either going to continue to do what I'm doing and year in, year out, also realizing that what I have right now can quickly disappear if I don't get it together.
Mm-hmm.
Or I can make a decision and stand up for it and say, okay, like, where do I go from here?
Yeah.
And being okay with starting over or repositioning myself, or um, getting other people involved and sharing what I need help with, so I can get those answers. So I can definitely relate to that. And I have so many people who are just, again, a part of the community. They're not necessarily, they maybe just be listening for the first time, or those who have been with us since we started. Let me know if you can relate, because a lot of the ladies in our community, I mean, they're married, they have the children, they have the job, they have all the things, but they don't have themselves, or not locked in with
Right.
themselves in a way that supports everything that they're doing, including the people that they love.
Yeah, I think the reticular like activating system in the brain is like that thing that kind of looks to confirm like the beliefs that we already have. And so if we already have these beliefs about ourselves, or these like unconscious beliefs, even like, oh, I'm not worthy, or like I'm not lovable as I am, or whatever that unconscious programming is, the brain's going to look to prove that to you. And that means it might like ignore all the information that comes to you that says the exact opposite, right? And then it's going to like magnify all the small moments and the misunderstandings that try and reconfirm that is true, right? And so I think that's why it's so tricky to like the things that we believe, we really have to like take those out and look at them and like question them, or we have to get to like the deeper unconscious beliefs that we hold about ourselves, which, you know, they don't just show up in these obvious ways. It's in all these like subtle ways, like you said about like not being a person on your list, right? Like what is the unconscious belief that's there? It's like, is everyone's more important than me? Or I'll pour into myself when I have time, like I'm last or whatever, or there's never enough time, or I don't have enough time or energy or whatever. So like there's all these unconscious beliefs about like lack, limitation, unworthiness about ourselves that are often like obvious when we take a look at the patterns that are playing out. And we can start to bring those unconscious beliefs to light and rewire them, because a lot of times like those beliefs are formed before the age of 7, before our brain even has like the ability to make sense of the world. We're like making meaning of it, and that's why we have such a hard time identifying these beliefs at first, because they're so deeply ingrained. And sometimes when we take them out and look at them, we actually are like, oh, that's so, like, to my now mature brain, that's so silly that I even believe that. Like, I know that's not true on this intellectual level, but I don't feel it in here, right? Because like knowing is different than like really knowing with the heart and with like,
Right.
our like our soul knowing.
That's so true. What would you say, like just some practical steps, right? What would be some practical
Mhm.
steps that you could share with someone to at least get them going and started in that direction?
Yeah, so I would say the first thing that I always tell people is to just start to do little check-ins with themselves, to notice how they're feeling in their body. I think for so many of us women, we spend so much time doing, 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 that we don't spend enough time being or noticing, like in our physical body or in ourselves, or like I said, like turning that lens inward. So like start taking moments to check in with yourself in the day. I would even like previously, when I started this work, I would even set little reminders in my phone, like, hey, have you checked in with yourself lately? To say like, how am I doing right now? Like, what am I feeling? Like in my body, do I have tension that I'm carrying in my head or in my shoulders? And I would do a little body scan from the top of my head all the way down, not trying to fix anything, just trying to notice it. What do I notice? And then when I notice the information that's coming through, like, oh, okay, I have a tightness in my jaw, or I have a tension in my shoulders, then it's like, okay, can I just allow it to be here? Because the other thing is knowing that all of those sensations are just the body trying to communicate, right? They're they're meant to serve a purpose. They're not trying to like harm us, but there's a message there. And if we can take that message in, then we can help kind of dissipate some of those sensations. So if you're like, okay, so I have this heaviness in my shoulders, Then a really great somatic tool that I like to use. And the reason why I like to use this is because, like I said, when we're so used to doing all the time, or we're very active in our mind, it can be really hard to like sift through the spaghetti brain. And so it's really good to drop into the body. And so I would say something like, okay, if this part of my body had a mouth and had a voice where it could speak, what would it say? And I don't want to speak about it. I want to speak from it. So like if my shoulders are heavy and I were to give them a mouth and a voice, maybe I would say like, I'm tired of carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders, you know? And then it's like, okay, there's some information for me. Okay, why do I feel like I'm carrying the weight of the world? Like underneath that. Or why do I feel like I have to carry the weight of the world? Like what's underneath that? And so that's how we start to peel back the layers. But the body is a really great gateway to start doing that. Yeah, and checking in with ourselves. And then from there, it's like just starting to ask yourself, what do I need? You know? So if I feel like I'm carrying the weight of the world, like what do I need to feel better? Do I need to maybe like take a load off? Can I ask somebody for help? Can I be really vulnerable in this moment and just say, you know, this is too much. It's not weak if I ask for help. It's courageous. And so can I ask somebody, hey, you know, like, can I extend this deadline, or can I get an extra hand here, or push some things off my plate until later? And then it's not always like the actual to-dos that we're carrying, but it's about like mental and emotional and energetic things that we're like, am I consuming too much of the news? Like, am I carrying the weight of like all of the darkness that's in the world and thinking that's like mine to hold when it's not, right? It's good to be aware, but like, am I taking on what's not mine? And trying to like carry too much. And so just starting to like look at those different things as ways to like start turning the lens back inward and then caring for ourselves. And then I also pair that with nervous system regulation to like really help remind the body that like you're safe. You're safe to slow down. You're safe to let go. You're safe to just take care of yourself.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Nicki. This has been incredible. So
Yeah,
powerful. And for
thank
those
you.
who are listening, like taking some moments to just let that sink in and to practice those exercises. Let us know if you've done them as well and how the experience was for you, because these are so helpful. We actually do this a lot. Anytime, whether it's myself, the girls, anyone in the house, if we need to dissect our emotions, we will, right? We'll get to the bottom of like, why am I actually crying? Why am I actually whining? Why do I feel a little bit more emotional today than I did, just yesterday? And we'll try to figure out like what those commonalities are. So I certainly appreciate that, Nicki. It does work. Now, if anyone wanted
Yeah.
to connect with you further and just learn more about what it is that you do through your work, and maybe even want to schedule a call, things of that nature, what does that process look like?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram. I'm at Sunflowers in Sun Showers. You can visit my website and you can book a free consultation. That's on my website, www.sunflowersinsunshowers.com. And I'm also on LinkedIn just under my name, Nicki Brown. So yeah, you can find me there.
Amazing. Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much. And I'm so grateful that you're now a part of the Holistic Sister Circle.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. It's been great chatting today.
Queen, thank you so much for tuning in. It truly warms our heart that you're taking the time out of your day to connect with us. If you'd like to connect with our guests further, you can find their information located in the description section of this episode. And if you found this episode helpful, share with another queen. And don't forget to connect with the Holistic Sister Circle on Instagram and Facebook. And until next week, stay blessed. Mwah.